Hey everybody, Super Low Pursuit here. This will be episode 180. I have to clean up some metals to make room for the daily 13 metals. So I'll try to do that as quick as I can. I'm probably just going to bust that out and probably call it a video. Maybe I'll... assuming that I just blaze through it again, I might pad it out a little bit. Oh, it's update notes here. Oh yeah, I already knew that. So what is this? Errors will range from large choke HP. Players will regain. Oh wow. I didn't experience that, thankfully. Oh, what should I put on in the background? Apology jewels! Alright, snow. Alright, what's my party want? Alright, let me pause the video really quick and decide what I'm going to play real bad. Okay, I think I'm going to go back to the Doki Game Club podcast. I'm about 34 minutes in. They're talking about Joe and Mac, Caveman Ninja. But yeah, you should check it out if you're into retro games. But yeah, sorry I'm going to kind of start in the middle of this practically, but I want to listen to a podcast, and I can't think of anything else to put on right now. So here we go.
And stopping. If it's not good, then it's frustrating. And then when you combine that with something like you just described, where you have these tiny little platforms, you just don't even want to play anymore. Well, sorry.
So I got to give me a few minutes to clean up my metals. So if you want to skip ahead, I'll make some room, and then I'll do the. So that's it, right? Just that and high score challenge. I have time on that. So I already did the gym. Okay. So yeah, let me clean up a little bit, and then I'll get to it.
I was just gonna say, like, I think to me these kind of decisions reek of something that was designed with platforming as an afterthought, you know.
Right. Yeah. Or coming from the arcade where it's like, oh, we want your money.
Exactly.
But on the SNES version, doesn't really translate very well.
No. Well, but then you have the financial decision to make to say, okay, well, do we pay this team to rebalance this game?
No.
Because Joe and Mac needs to feel like Joe and Mac, even if Joe and Mac mechanics are bad. They need to feel the way that the arcade game feels, because at the time that this came out. It even says it on the Super Nintendo box about it being based on an arcade game, having arcade action.
Yeah.
So it needs to feel the way that the original felt. But there's no way that when a port is brought over that they're going to redial in everything. At best you can hope for things like checkpoints and overworld maps and things that weren't in there, but were a sound financial decision based on the success of Super Mario Brothers.
Right. Which works for Super Mario Brothers, but didn't really work for this game.
Yeah.
Because if you die and you end up back on the overworld, you still have access to just bypass all the worlds you already did. So the checkpoints don't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Like,
I thought. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you game over, you start over. You lose your checkpoints, so it's absolutely useless. But go on, Brian.
Yeah, one part I thought was especially egregious. I think it was stage 9, or maybe it was 8. There was this section where it wasn't exactly like flowing lava, but it was like this red hot pits, and there was a bunch of pterodactyls that I think you were supposed to stand on top of.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
The purple pterodactyls.
Did anybody complete that, like, I don't know, standing on the pterodactyls?
Yeah.
No.
No.
It took me a few times to do it, but then, yeah.
No, I only had a few lives left at that point, and I was just like, I did it a couple times, and it's like, screw it, I just started jumping. Now I got hit on the lava, and then I got hit on the pterodactyls, and I got hit in the lava. But I, eventually made it through with life.
The thing I would do is I would end up hopefully timing my thing right, that I would jump out of the lava, get hit, but my invincibility frame would be there, so it would land on the pterodactyl, and then I would kind of keep going, fall off, and then rinse and repeat.
I never got on the pterodactyls. Well, then I killed some, and then I got screwed, and I was like, okay, look, it's just gonna start jumping.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into the level design and the sort of stage breakdown, stage by stage, of Joe and Mac, and particularly for the Super Nintendo. So the SNES version, arcade, and Genesis version all share the same 10 stages. And with the SNES version, you get bonus stages, but each of those stages, the main 10, have their own boss. And so we'll run through these here one at a time. We mentioned before that the sort of stage selection is based on an overworld map in the Super Nintendo version, and that the arcade has branching paths. Before we start talking about the individual stages, I kind of wanted to mention that you can have a very different experience in the arcade from playthrough to playthrough based on which of these branching paths you take. There's one stage in particular that gives you the option to ride a dinosaur. There are locations where the boss fight changes. I don't want to call it a boss arena, but the area in which you fight them looks different. So kind of a neat thing in the arcade version. Kind of strange that they did not give you more options in the Super Nintendo version, but it is what it is. And briefly, the NES, Amiga, and Game Boy versions all have 5 stages as opposed to the 10 stages in the main console versions. So kind of neat, but. So let's kick it off with the first stage here. Joe, what do you got here?
Well, I just wanted to say real quick, because we were talking about the overworld earlier, and this got me to thinking while you were talking. I was listening also, but I was also thinking. The purpose of having an overworld. And I was also thinking, even though it's only the Super NES version that has one, to me it almost seems like kind of a value at, like almost the illusion of value. Where you get a home game and it's like, hey, look how long this game is. It's totally not a short arcade game because you can select the stages and go, take your time and listen to this, groovy little music while you go between stages.
But when you think of this being on the Super Nintendo and then it coming out at the same time as Super Mario World, and it's so small. It's absolutely so small, because I got to the end of the game and I was like, okay, this is the first map. But no,
I had the exact same experience.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is really going to open up. This is going to be massive.
Oh, as if it's like an island in Mario World.
Exactly. Just like one of many.
Yeah, I was like, okay, map 1 is done. And I was like, well, that was kind of beefy for a first map, but okay, sure. and then it's done.
Aren't you glad in retrospect that you were wrong?
Kind of, but I was like hoping maybe there'd be some different kind of levels, because they kind of did the whole ice level, fire level, grass level, air level. So they did everything in the first map, and I was like, well, what are they going to do after? Where is it going to go? But
prehistoric times, where are you going to go?
Where else do you got? Yeah, what else do you visit?
Well, speaking of prehistoric, I have dubbed the first level the prehistoric field. I had to create names for myself just because they don't really give you many descriptions here. There's no stage 1.
No, none of the versions name them. Yeah, it's weird.
It's kind of a disappointment.
What I think is also would stand out between all the development teams, because I'm assuming this is not all games weren't developed by the same team.
No.
They can't be. But I'm assuming they had a big board meeting, and then there was, you must be able to walk up a Tyrannosaurus's back, because every first level has that on every game.
And it's a big deal. I mean, the sprite art is awesome. Like the layout of level 1 is really cool. I mean, it sets the tone of what Joe and Mac is going to look like visually, and that's thrilling. And it's kind of something that should have been utilized more in the game, interacting with giant dinosaurs. I mean, it works particularly well in this one, and it might have thinned out as the stages went on if you kept doing it. But
or just different ones, like maybe, hey, let's have the auto scroller not on logs, but on one of those lock nest looking ones.
Well, they did do that in the arcade version.
Exactly.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's
They
smart.
took your note.
I went back in time and.
All right, that's enough for now. I'll bust the 13 out, and if this video is running short, then I'll go back and do some more cleanup if you want to keep watching.
Told them.
Yeah.
Oh, good job.
Well, so the first level, like you were saying, is really straightforward, and it also, of course, as most first levels have to do, it has one of the most recognizable jingles. You know, the song, the first track is, I think it's pretty good. I think it kind of sets the stage. It's got a very, it just fits. It fits the theme of caveman, prehistoric. You know, it's got the nice drums and everything. It sounds way better than the arcade music, at least from what I heard of the arcade music.
Hey,
all the games, all the versions that I've played, the Super Nintendo and the Amiga ones have like the best music. Everyone else was kind of shit. Like,
yeah, I mean it's variations on a theme. There's different sound chips involved, and you know, I mean a lot of people consider that Genesis version to be the best of the bunch. And, you know, we can talk a little bit more about the soundtrack. I don't want to.
Let's.
Yeah, we won't go into it now, but you know, it establishes the look. There's the really gnarly bearded cavemen again, and they make really. I've always thought they were really fun noises, but I played this all the time as a kid. You know, whenever you hit them, and then they go, running away. A lot of the times, if you don't kill them, there's mini T-Rexes.
That's some great animation too.
Really good. And you know, this first stage makes me think of Bonk's Adventure also, which we brought up before, mostly because of you walking on the back of the sleeping T-Rex at the end of the stage. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is watching the arcade version. See, because I grew up with the Super Nintendo version, in which the dinosaur is always sleeping. And unless I'm mistaken here.
No, I believe he has his eyes. I believe he has his eyes.
Not in the Super Nintendo.
No, I think he's asleep the whole time.
The Genesis one, yeah.
But in the Genesis and the arcade version, he kind of, as soon as you walk over him, he opens his eyes and he's like looking left and right. You know, like you woke him up, and that really helps set the atmosphere for the boss fight. You know,
because on the Super Nintendo one, it's not really. Is it alluding that it's the one that you walked on that you're fighting?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In every version.
I feel so.
That's canon.
Yeah,
that is the T-Rex. And
you know, while we're mentioning that boss fight, it's important to point out that the Super Nintendo version, the stage doesn't change. Like you hop up on that second tier, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's just static the whole time.
Yeah.
And so you fight the T-Rex, and then you beat the T-Rex, and that's
really simple.
But whereas in the arcade version, Genesis version, and various other ones, almost all the other ones actually, with the exception of Nintendo, which really strips this game down to nothing. But yeah, with the arcade version in particular, as you sort of, they don't give you a health indicator on the T-Rex, or do they?
They do.
I'm not sure.
Genesis does, yeah.
Okay, so but as you're beating him down, there's not like indicators on at what point it does this, but the platform that you're standing on drops, like it sort of crumbles beneath you, which just adds some like excitement to the overall experience of fighting the T-Rex, right? Because like
it's like a second
you're
phase.
up high, well, it's like a second phase, but it's also like you're kind of safe and you're at eye level, and it's easier to dodge things, but as that platform begins to crumble, then you kind of have to change up the way in which you're attacking.
Yeah, it puts you in further peril, like as each level it drops.
Yeah,
which is, you know, like that's fun, and that's good game design. And it
would have been fun if the fight wasn't insanely hard.
Well, yeah.
Well, in the Super Nintendo version, so you're just standing up on the top of the platform, and it's really the only thing you have to watch out for is he spits out. Does he spit out cavemen and rocks?
He does.
Yes, he does.
Yes. And you have to watch out for those, and every now and then he'll lunge forward, kind of, and charge.
Sometimes he does his tail too.
Well, that's only if you're down by him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Close to him. And only a fool would stand by the T-Rex.
Exactly. I think that's fairly unavoidable too, which is another reason that being up on that platform is a safe place.
Yeah,
because you can easily dodge the rolling of the enemies and whatever.
And
another reason why the Super Nintendo version is easier is because the cavemen during the boss battles you can farm health.
Yes. Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Yeah. And also,
avoid them.
One of the differences I thought was really funny looking at the arcade version is that, and the Genesis version too, is that you see the cave babe there the whole time.
Oh, exactly. Oh, really? Is she there?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, which is cool because like that's, I mean, as kind of corny as it sounds, like that's your treasure, right? Like that's the thing that you're. Yeah. So,
Do you think that Joe and Mac was influenced by Double Dragon at all?
I think everything was influenced by Double Dragon.
Yeah, it's a safe bet.
Double Dinosaur.
Yep. Oh, that'd be a really good game name. Let's save
Double
that.
Dinosaurs.
Don't publish that on the podcast.
All right, note to edit.
Yeah. And also one final note. I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot about this first level, but I do get really excited about Joe and Mac. I know that I kind of like brought hell upon you all by choosing this game, but it does. I played this game a shit ton growing up. Like this is the game that I would just, if I didn't know what to play, I would just pop in Joe and Mac and play most of it, or maybe get through it. It's just like a very easy game to play for me, and I loved all the animations, and I love the iconic Bafoom that the T-Rex lets out, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, which is kind of a weird curse to have on yourself.
So as a kid, Joe, would you like finish it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
But only a couple times. Normally I think I would probably play to the lava levels and then just kind of be like, or die or game over and be like, I'm done. That's fine.
That's it.
Yeah.
This maybe should have gone in a different segment, but to tell you the truth, the art and the general feel about Joe and Mac reminds me of something that, of your Subhuman Zords content.
Oh, I'm 100% influenced by Joe and Mac. Like, yeah. Especially like when the dinosaurs' eyes get really big and there's like one teardrop coming from them.
Yeah.
I just love that stuff.
That's awesome.
And that's, without spending too much time talking about your art, you are obviously influenced by manga, I mean, it's like, and this game has a sort of Japanese look to it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You can see its roots for sure from Data East.
Yeah, it's obviously not a Western made game. Just because it's not shit, number one, but...
Take that, the West.
Yeah, let it be known that Frank doesn't like Western SNES games.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's our spicy take segment.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's spicy.
Okay, so the next level 2, we've got this filtering jungle. This one you have kind of a water base that you're going through. There's water spouts going up, and there are electrical fish, or if there's a eel.
I guess those supposed to be eels. I'm not sure.
I think they're fish, because when they die, they have like little fins on the sides.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Something interesting about the Genesis
come on.
version, the water spouts, you can't stand on them.
Oh, really?
I wasn't able to. Yeah.
No one got that far except for you.
Yeah. Right.
I definitely remember doing that in the Super Nintendo version, but when I played through the arcade version, I don't recall trying to do that. I think I just stuck to the platforms.
But this one is pretty straightforward. What get introduced are these kind of little shop of horrors, man-eating plants. And you have little ones, which foreshadows the boss, which is Seymour, a big one. And
Exactly.
I didn't do this in the SNES version, but in the actual NES version, if you get too close, it'll just eat you whole.
No way.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. That's an arcade thing too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, gotcha.
That's a missed opportunity for the SNES again on a boss fight.
Yeah.
But this is the first time you get a few of these weapons. The fire weapon, that was the first time you get that.
No, you get it in level 1.
Really?
Yeah, but you gotta jump off a crocodile.
Oh,
you have to jump off a purple guy that's flying by, and then you have to do a high jump to get it.
What's the first time that they really spoon feed it to you?
Yeah, it's right down there.
Right before the boss fight, it's there, and it's like, you're going to want to use this.
And it trivializes the boss, because you can just duck and throw it underneath him, and it just hits him.
You know what else trivializes the boss is the fact that on the Super NES version, you can just run behind him. And, and just stand there and hit him, and even his arms flailing won't hurt you.
That's awesome.
Good stuff.
I like the pits that he shoots. It kind of looks like it reminds me of Symphony of the Night. There's an enemy that kind of looks like this that shoots these pits.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the same kind of look to it. It's kind of cool.
This is another boss too that I have fond memories of the sound effects for, because he makes his little like blah blah sounds, and then whenever he gets really hit, it's like it sounds to me. It always says damn.
To me, I don't know if it's just my shitty memory, but I vaguely remember him going, yeah.
Well,
I'll have to look it up.
In the arcade version,
either way,
he
I'm
says
glad
like,
that
But I'm not saying that he doesn't say damn, but I think he also says yeah. I'll have to look it up. Anyways.
Either way, I love the Little Shop of Horror connection, and I love that he's vocalizing. I mean, either way, it's a talking plant. So
well, he talks more than the other bosses.
Yeah. And so this guy, we've described this. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're probably imagining what we're talking about. But the beautiful sprite art for this massive green plant with like ruby red lips, opening its mouth and flailing these tendrils, these green tendrils around, and periodically he'll spit out these pits that like land into the ground. I guess they're seeds really, and like they'll sprout out, and like a smaller version of itself will appear and attack. So that's the thing that kind of keeps you moving around in this fight. But like we said, you can easily get behind this plant and sort of trivialize it, but you end up taking an attack in the process, which is probably enough to keep most kids at bay.
So the next level we've dubbed the Dactyl Nest, and it is a very, very, very short level. It is an upwards moving level, and there's a bunch of enemies, but you can bypass them pretty quickly. You just got to do your high jump a bunch. Then there's these nests of bees.
Oh boy!
Really annoying.
Let's talk about the nest of bees. Really annoying. If you're not smart enough, like we've mentioned before, I'm not real bright, and if you're dumb enough to leap into the area and think, oh man, I've got a boomerang, I'll just spam the boomerang, it'll be fine. Oh man, and if you're dumb enough to knock them down, it'll shoot out bees, and
there's no point in even
much like in real life. Much like in real life, leave the bee nest alone.
And what I noticed with watching the speed run is that the way that they jump, they kind of have certain enemies still on screen when they spawn the bee nests, and sometimes they don't even spawn at all. So they kind of manipulate it, and then they just kind of bypass it that way, which is, I wish I knew how, but I usually get to like 1 or 2 hearts by the time I get to the boss at the top, which is just a giant pterodactyl.
This was nearly impossible in the Genesis version.
Was it?
I can only imagine.
Actually, I reset the game, went back through the other, because you can choose not go the B way. The other way is almost as hard.
The B way.
So I went the non-B way, and then I turned it off at the boss.
Yamo B way.
But that boss is very simple. It goes up and down, back and forth. It's one of the first clone bosses. I think it's the only clone boss, right?
What do you mean when you say clone?
Because there's the exact same boss later on in another level.
Oh, right.
Well, it's definitely not the only one, because we'll see the T-Rex in some form a couple more times.
Yeah, but he doesn't look exactly the same.
Yeah.
This one's just a recolor.
That's true.
I think he's orange on this one or yellow.
He's green on this one, and I think he's like orange, purplish later or something.
Yeah. And then sometimes he has eggs that he drops that has, other smaller pterodactyls.
Right. And you're smart if you can knock those out of the air. And this was a point where I think my utilization of the boomerang was most effective. Because you can kind of get up there and really, it travels the furthest of all the weapons. So when you have the pterodactyl sort of moving from left to right and dropping its eggs, you can take them out of the equation pretty quickly.
Well, and the only thing that I would recommend if you're going to play this game is not to high jump, because you will continuously hit into him.
I always hit that thing,
Yeah. By accident, I always end up I'm going to up, and then I hit into him and I can't do my attack. And then,
that was the frustrating thing, because you're aiming up to hit
you have to push up and then to attack, but then you accidentally jump and then you hit into him.
We're talking about the ability to to reach the pterodactyl in certain situations, or not jump too high and run into it. But something that would really amplify the difficulty of this, and Joe's got a note here, is that if you don't have a projectile weapon, in the Super Nintendo version at least, if you die on the way up to the tree, or if you come into the stage,
it's actually okay. So this is what happened, and I blame the fact that I hadn't played Joe and Mac in probably a decade or so. I somehow managed to game over by the time I reached the pterodactyl. Maybe after the first time, I don't know how it happened. I blame the bees. But anyway, I started the level over again, and I didn't think about going back to another level to select that to get a weapon. But I didn't have a weapon. There aren't any weapons on the climb, so. Right. And unlike the second pterodactyl fight, there's no weapon given to you at the top. So what you end up with is a club to fight this flying enemy, and it's almost impossible. You can hit him a few times, but yeah, needless to say, I died, and I was just like, okay, it's out of the question to get up there without a weapon.
Yeah, it makes it 100. It's a very easy boss made hard.
Yeah, that's actually a cool animation. Alright, so I guess do a couple 660 runs so I can kill 2 raid bosses, and then I will do some more metal cleanup because I really need to. So if you want to keep watching, I'll keep playing the podcast.
Okay, so in level 4, which we have dubbed Shred'em Stream, it involves Joe and Mac making their way across kind of like a log flume ride, I guess. It's not an auto-scroller, if I'm thinking correctly. Yeah, but it's still implied that you're moving across a body of water, some sort of river, and you're making your way through towards the boss at the end, and you're avoiding your typical Neanderthals, as well as the common video game trope of leaping fish, that are quite capable of damaging you in the process. And all of that culminates in a boss fight, which is a school of blue sharks, I guess. There's some sort of prehistoric shark,
dinosaur, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some sort of closer technical term for them, but this is all very.
In 1991, I would have said plesiosaur, but I might have been wrong.
So somebody give me a breakdown on what this boss fight looks like, or how does it play?
So there's only four at a time on screen, and then they kind of just cycle below you, and then there is not much RNG, but they will kind of leap out, and then you have to move your projectiles in a way that you kind of foresee where they're going to go to hit them.
I feel like it's complete RNG though. In their timing for jumping out.
It isn't, because I've seen a speed run where he times his boomerang hits perfectly.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah, it feels random because I think it's kind of programmed to be not predictive, but I think if you know the pattern, you just know the pattern.
But it's kind of like it's like a large, because that's what the piranhas do throughout the levels, just randomly jump out of the water, and they kind of have a tendency to spawn right below you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a total life suck. This is one of
like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was before the podcast or during, but during the speed run, I know I'm going to quote this a lot, but the guy continuously does a roll, and it does damage, so he continuously hits them so he doesn't get hurt. Wow. The way I bypassed it is by using the wheel. You just spam the wheels, and then they hit the team wheel all the way. Yeah, they hit those fish on the way up. So
that's smart.
But that's like using a heavy hitter in any other game where you're setting yourself up for some trouble if you whiff that shot. With the wheel. So give and take, but it is a cool strategy.
Yeah, it's I find it easier to do that than to try to jump over them or hit them with a boomerang or something.
To level 5, which we have dubbed the Brachiosaurus Pit. Don't know how accurate that is for you dino nerds out there, but hopefully it's close enough. Someone's going to be like, actually, that's a brontosaurus. But anyway, it starts off with you scrolling downward, and you're true to the back of the box. You're dactyl gliding at the start of this level. So,
peeking the beat.
Yeah, peeking the beat. So you ride this down, and from the top of the screen, boulders are dropping down. And unless, if you're foolish enough to stay at the top of the screen, you're just basically going to get pelted for a life's worth of energy before you even make it to the boss. But, mercifully enough, the boss is waiting for you just a few screens down. So it's not long, and you land on a log bridge, and out comes the Brachiosaur in one of what I think is one of the few fair, easy patterned boss fights in the game that's just very straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this, but they give you two throw items on the way down, the same ones, which is the basic one, like the hatchet. But I'm wondering if you both avoided those and you didn't have a projectile, how hard that boss would be.
Very extremely.
Yeah, I wonder because he's out of range in a lot of instances.
You have to do
You
have to do a high jump, and then you would have to be like really on him to give him that little hammer hit, right? It would be hard.
Right. Yeah, it would definitely take some expert timing. I have to imagine that someone's done some sort of playthrough of this game with no projectiles.
I'd like to see it. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be a great run.
Yeah. So one thing I want to point out too with this, we're calling it a brachiosaur. I'm not quite sure. It's the one with the ridge on his head, right?
Yeah. I just looked it up. It is a brachiosaurus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good job. However, brachiosaurus is not a water
nor was a brachiosaur's neck made of a completely spherical ball.
By the way, can we actually take a moment to talk about ball necks? Because that's another standout feature.
That was where I was going at with it, was that this is the first point in the game where you see a long-necked dinosaur with these sorts of this weird posable ball neck. I guess it was the easiest thing to animate.
Yeah.
It's something that'll come back up later on, and it kind of plays into the very, very, very final stage. But I like something about it. Like it feels like a comfortable pair of shoes.
It feels like
a familiar thing.
It feels like it was created out of necessity, but it was designed deliberately to be like, hey, you know what? This is our stylistic choice.
Yeah,
I think
it's like we're playing a video game.
They could have easily made those sprites overlap one another and not have gaps like that. They're not using any data. Like the sprite itself is its size, right? They could have easily just put all three of them over one another and have them meld into one another. So it was obviously an obvious choice that they did.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, Data East. Frank says you suck and you didn't
go back to game school.
Well, I'm not saying it sucks. I'm just saying they could have done it better.
Kind of reminds me, was it Clay Fighter?
Vector Man.
Vector Man's the first thing that comes to mind to me.
Balls 3D.
Balls with a Z, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, in the 90s, balls were very in.
Okay, so the next level is the ice level. We're dubbing that the crystalline caverns. Did anybody actually notice any kind of slippage on the when you're Joe's walking around? Did that actually have anything?
I thought it was inconsistent
as well, but it was very slight. It wasn't.
At first, I was like, wait, is it actually happening, or is it just Joe being kind of messy as usual? But
or maybe we're Pavlovian about it, and we're trained to go, oh, ice means I'm going to bust my ass.
Yeah. Right. Or we have like Stockholm syndrome, and we're just thinking that Joe, no matter what, is going to slip.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm remembering,
it was very subtle, and so it wasn't that bad. It wasn't too annoying.
The only part that were kind of annoying that is those spiky parts that you kind of have to like do some platforming, but you're kind of loose, and then you end up in the spikes.
Right.
And this is the stage where you begin by falling into it. Am I
well,
remembering correctly?
I think that's actually only in the arcade version. The end of the previous boss, I believe, or one of them. I think it's like a different route because the ground shakes and you end up falling down. Oh yeah, because they have the ankylosaur before the crystal caverns in the arcade version, and then the ground breaks and you fall below the lava area, and that's the ice.
Okay. No, this one you just start there.
Yeah.
This is great. Everybody's existing in a few different dimensions at once.
Yeah.
It's actually really confusing.
Yeah.
I wonder if in the Joe universe, like if they kind of travel between universes at some point.
Poor Mac. He doesn't get. No one ever talks about Mac.
Who owns Data East? Who bought Data East?
Oh boy, that's something worth looking up.
Because somebody owns this IP, and they could bring it back.
They actually tried to a few years ago. I think it was like 2011.
But it wasn't Data East.
No,
someone licensed it.
Yeah,
fell through
because they had like designs posted for Joe and Mac and everything. I can't think off the top of my head who the studio was, but I want to say that it was a Western take, kind of
surely
like kind of
like River City.
Yeah, and like Wonder Boy, like the new one of that, which was like I think European, maybe. So I think it was one of those deals, but it fell through clearly because we're not playing Joe and Mac, 3 right now.
The Kickstarter fail.
Based on the concept art, it's for the best. So in this stage, the crystalline caverns eventually lead you to possibly my favorite boss.
Yeah,
fight.
this one was gnarly. This is I was stunned when this happened. You're just fighting this big mammoth, and just shooting him in the face, and all of a sudden his tusks fly off, and you're like, okay, that's fine. And then about half of his face,
his entire trunk comes off. It's completely
snaps off.
Like a clean cartoon snap, like a jagged snap, kind of just pops right off.
And every other boss that you kill kind of just goes off screen somewhat. They kind of they linger a little bit but go off. But his corpse just hangs on.
It's weird. It's it's the only really instance where it's more than cartoonishly gruesome. And I was thinking while I was playing it, that this is the kind of carnage a caveman ninja would be likely to unleash.
Absolutely, yeah.
And arguably, if we want to get science nerd about this, the woolly mammoth would probably have been the only boss in this game that would have coexisted with cavemen.
Just the only boss, yeah.
Yeah. So
depending on the world, ice caves probably wouldn't be the home of a woolly mammoth. If we're gonna get technical.
Well,
the final home.
Were you there?
Yeah, exactly.
I think they were.
Yeah, they should have had them defrosting, right?
They were not cave dwelling, as far as I know.
That's a big cave, though.
That is a pretty big cave. I give it that.
I think it'd have been fine.
He's just trying to get out. But he got his face ripped off.
It's Joe and Mac blowing it.
What's funny about this boss is I actually realized that I had a false memory about it when I was playing it. Despite the carnage, for some reason, when I got to it, I was like, okay, here's the part where the mammoth busts out of the ice wall, in the back of the screen. And then he came out of the right, and I was like, oh, I guess that doesn't happen in this game.
That was all in your memories, I guess.
That's a pretty good memory, though.
I should have kept it.
Cherish it and hang on to that one.
It's a shame that they don't show the girls on the back on the SNES version, because that would have been great to just see this huge mammoth just hanging out with this babe, and then he's like, "What are you doing here?" And then starts getting his face melted off.
He sounds a little like Macho Man. What are you doing here?
Hey, brother.
So I feel like this is a good opportunity, since you bring the girls back up in the context of the boss, for me to share my theory, is that these Neanderthals are worshipping the bosses in each of these stages, and that these girls are offerings to them.
I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Why else would they have just left them there? If they took them and tied them up, went through the trouble to tie them up,
I'm going to say that's canon.
Who unties them?
Who unties? Well, Joe does, or Mac.
No, because they just show up. Mind.
Well, no, but in the arcade version, when you beat the boss, I believe their ropes come snap untied, and I'm gonna say the power of the boss being defeated, or maybe the power of the boss has been released from these girls, and they're just free to fall.
Could be.
One thing that I want to note, and it's on boss from the next level, but I want to say it before I forget. It's the clone of the pterodactyl, but once you kill him, the woman comes from the right, which is a cliff, and you don't see her on screen. So she walks on from basically walking on air.
Maybe she was hanging there the whole time.
Maybe.
That's an obvious sign of miscommunication. Somebody screwed the pooch on that and said, okay, well, we have this awesome stage. Look, it's a cliff. And then the guy's like, well, you remember to put the girl in there, right?
Okay, I'm going to take you guys to the meeting room in Data East. They're in crunch right now for Joe and Mac. It's circa 1990. It's the Super NES version.
Through that, Joseph.
And they said, hey, one guy comes in, a designer. He's like, hey, man, you guys programmed this weird. She just comes in at the end.
All right.
And the guy looks at him. He's smoking a cigarette. He hasn't shaved in a week, and he goes, who gives a fuck?
If it bothers you so much, go edit it yourself. Level 7 is Sheer Shimmy, and it's another upwards platformer. Another really short upwards platformer. You just go up this cliff, like I was mentioning on the other section. There's just a bunch of Neanderthals. There's no bees this time, thankfully. There's just dudes rolling around and one dude rolling a big boulder down. And then you go up, and it's the copycat boss, which is just a little bit faster version of the pterodactyl that throws eggs, goes up and down, back and forth. He does this move where he kind of jets on the bottom and the middle of the screen,
right?
Which is kind of hard to avoid because your button inputs are kind of laggy. So,
and the timing is very quick from when he disappears off screen to when he flies. Like the rate at which he leaves the screen and the rate at which he comes back in is very different.
And it's not like in Mega Man X where you had like Storm Eagle giving you like a audio cue that he was coming in. Like he just does it. Like
well, not to mention, I mean, if you want to compare the two, but like Mega Man X, like the stage size in comparison to the sprites is massive. So I mean, it's telegraphed from a mile away with Storm Eagle. But
this one is just like, oh, there's a guy in your face, and then you get hit. Even if you did do a high jump, I don't even think your high jump speed is not fast enough to even jump over it.
Yeah, you have to do a regular jump. Yeah. Which is it's not what you would think to do. Yeah.
No, and by nature, like every time, if I'm not holding up. Like, I'm not playing the game. I was continuously high jumping. I don't know why. I think I got some PTSD on falling down pits that I needed to have some clearance in my mind. So I needed to go more up in the air and then telegraph where I was going.
I actually thought that this version of the boss, maybe it was just the experience of playing the first one, and I thought it was a little easier of a pattern. Not that the first one had that difficult of a pattern, but the first one had this tendency, it had a different off-screen move. It had one where it shrieked, and then it jetted even faster, like across the very bottom. And it kind of, you didn't know when it was going to go into that version of the pattern. With this one, I found it easy to just, as long as you can do a regular jump over him, then you could do that, and then all you have to do is duck for the next, where he goes, one higher, or like a few pixels higher than that. So it was a little more reliable to me. It was kind of like rote memory for doing his pattern.
I got really lucky and pattern locked him on the one that he just goes left and right really slowly across the screen.
That's good.
So I was able to kill him really fast. So.
Okay, so level 8 we have titled the Flamin' Hot Cheapskates stage, and this is the one involving the volcano, is that right?
Yes.
So somebody walk me through this, because like the fire stages towards the end kind of blur together.
Yeah, they kind of meld together. This one is the first one that has the what is alluded to have like the they go up and down. So it's supposed to be like I don't know, a seismic.
Yeah, the platforms are like the earthquake.
Oh, right.
Like in Super C. Yeah, but the screen doesn't shake or anything, so it's kind of just these platforms going up and down. But they also introduce a new enemy, which is these little like kind of raptors. I don't know if you guys remember.
Yeah, which is funny because they don't. I think just not to jump ahead too far, but the boss of this is another T-Rex, and. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the arcade version, he actually barfs out those little dudes.
Gosh, I think so.
Yeah, and so in this version, I believe he just barfs out more. It's more the same, right? It's more like boulders and cavemen, because that's all he can do.
I don't even think he does cavemen.
He does. Okay, it's just boulders. Yeah.
On the second one, I don't think there's cavemen.
Yeah. So I don't know. I wish they had kept these enemies in here more, because they're not annoying, and it's kind of nice just to have a little variety. So I would love to have seen more mixing it up with the enemies.
They have in this level that I noticed is they have the baiting of the meat on fire.
Oh yeah,
like they have these like little like fire pits.
Oh yeah,
and they just throw a huge chunk of health on it, and then you're like, well, fuck, like I'm gonna lose half my health trying to get it, so I'm not even gonna bother.
Is this the same stage that there's the section where you first come out and you're on a platform sort of in the middle of the screen, and there's a purple pterodactyl like flying below the platform, and you have just a moment to like get on it?
No, that's one of the next ones.
Okay.
This one is the one that kind of starts like it looks like a bridge. You can see the volcano in the back, and then they introduced the bonfire like really fast. It's just there, so I guess you can kind of get hit by it by just touching it, I guess. But then it jumps right into seismic up and downs, and then these like kind of tilty go up and down that have like boulders that go up. And
one thing that I noticed in this, and again, I might be mixing everything up because now I have 1,000 versions of Joe and Mac in my head, and it's driving me insane.
We should have really like put a hold on checking the other ones out.
Maybe.
And just talked about.
I mean, I think it makes for interesting conversation, but at the same time, like my mind is a complete mess, and I'm gonna have to go on a detox after this. But I know that they're more prevalent in the other versions, but I feel like in this level they really introduced more of the vehicle-based cavemen.
Yeah,
sure. The ones flying the little
and driving. Right? There's driving ones too.
The driving ones were on the bamboo one as well, like the river one.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
That's where they were first introduced. But yeah, I think there's a flying one.
We should definitely talk about those enemies though, because I think they're awesome.
They're awesome, and they're more prevalent on the other versions. Yeah. Because I remember playing the Genesis one, and they were right in the first level.
And they're so cool. That's like,
you're right.
Exactly what I want in a caveman enemy is, and the fact that when you attack them enough, you hit them enough times, and you destroy their vehicle, and they kind of like fly out of it like still seated, and they're with that expression like, oh my god, he just destroyed my vehicle. Like, holy shit.
And they have goggles.
Wile E. Coyote fashion.
And they have like goggles on. And
the flying ones have the aviator kind of look to them.
Yeah. So
that's definitely a thing that the Flintstones invented, was the idea of
big rock cars,
technology,
big stone wheels. And
I will say that I don't think that, other than what I said earlier, I don't think the boss is really even worth that much discussion. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about him.
It's a ball neck T-Rex that shoots the big rocks out. Like he spits out the big boulders,
and he does that bafoom.
And then bafoom, and then you hit him, and then his eyes roll back into his head, and he looks straight at the sky, and he's like, ah.
This is one you can't do this on one of the last ones, but you can stand under him pretty reliably and just shoot straight up.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, he won't touch you.
Yeah. So level 9, we have what we've dubbed the Cliffs of Despair, which I think is an apt title because it has some of the most annoying platforming in the game. Specifically I talked about this earlier in the show, but really narrow landing points for platforms that you have to very precisely either small or high jump on, and there's also flying pterodactyls above you, and it's just a complete cluster.
This is the one I was talking about where you have to land on top of the pterodactyls, or is that the previous one?
This is the one, yeah. For sure.
Okay, yeah, this one.
And this is the one that introduces these jets of lava coming out. That if you're smart enough, you won't jump on them. But if you're introduced to the jet of water, you might think, oh, I'm going to jump on top of it. That's going to be a fail. It's a very short level too, actually.
Yeah, that's something I want to point out. Like as we're going through these stages, where it may seem to the listener like we're getting briefer and briefer about the description of each of the stages, but these stages are absolutely designed to be an arcade game.
Yeah,
it's brief and it's difficult and it's a quarter muncher, and then that's why the Super Nintendo one is so forgiving, because they decided to not deplete your health, to give you tons of health when you do get hit, and so the whole thing is just so I just wanted to quickly say
And a pro tip that I've seen from speedrun, if you do your double tap roll against the wall that is like your height, you will climb that wall while rolling.
Really?
Nice. So there's like a part in this level that has like these kind of steps, and they have like these dudes like jetting down rolling, and I dealt with them with the wheel because the wheel would climb the walls, but I just watched the guy do it. Like he just climbs up and hits into them, and it's like cakewalk.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So the boss of this level is the previously mentioned Ankylosaur,
Double lame.
That's right.
You know, I agree with what Brandon said earlier in that it is kind of a clever design in some ways, but my memory about this boss holds true in that it takes forever to kill. It's just like
comparatively
well,
for sure.
It's one of those things where these bosses, there's no really clear. It's like the health bar isn't reliable because each bar takes probably sometimes with this boss maybe 4 or 5 hits to even knock a bar off.
All right,
well, the thing is
I freed up 28 spaces. Oh, we should be a guilty event already. Anyways, I think that's enough for today. At least this video. If you're still watching, thank you, and see you tomorrow. Bye.